Good morning, class, or good afternoon. Today we are going to be celebrating a little bit of October spookiness with a Halloween themed project. And we are going to be creating kind of a ghosted effect on a person to make it look as though they're kind of a phantom or a ghost in some kind of background that you select or choose. So the first thing that we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up our background image. Now, I've just selected a simple background, but the key here for the whatever photograph that you want to use for your background, you're going to make sure it's going to be something that will look good whenever you put a person in this. So this photograph, you can see the ground or the grass here at the bottom is very close to the picture or the camera when the photograph was taken. And we want to make sure that that is what we're looking for. We don't want to have like a big like mountain view or a big like city view, like it's taken like really high up in the air. We want to make sure that we are looking at something that it would be realistic to put a person right here in the center of this image and have them actually touching the ground. The second step that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up a new layer by selecting image. And we are going to go ahead and insert in a picture of a person that we want to use. I have this one already saved. But again, the key here to picking a photo that will work well for this assignment is making sure that they have a nice, clean, empty background and that there is nothing, or I'm sorry, they have the entire person in the photograph. Something like this picture would not work well because you don't see their whole body. We want to make sure we have the entire body of the person, like these two images or the one that I'm going to use right now of this woman. Now, when it inserts it in there, you guys already know that we can go ahead and arrange using our arrange tool, which is usually already automatically selected. And we're going to go ahead and adjust it in a way that I'm going to think size and scale wise makes sense for where she is in the image. I'm pretty satisfied with that. And what we're going to now need to do is make sure that we have that picture selected or that layer selected. And we are going to want to eliminate the background using our good old trusty wand select tool. I'm just going to go ahead and click anywhere in the white background. And you can see it did a decent job, but it did start to pick up areas that I do want to make sure are still included. So what I'm going to have to do is change my tolerance on the wand tool to make sure I don't lose that bit of hair right there that you can see. So I'm going to select and deselect, and I'm going to lower my tolerance this time. And again, this will always be different depending on what kind of photo you use. You may not even have to use this step or do this step, but I'm going to lower my tolerance so that hopefully this time when I select the white background, it doesn't select all of her hair. Now, there's a little bit right there that did get picked up, but I'm not going to be terribly concerned with that. But something I do need to pay attention to are things like these little gaps right here where the white background didn't get selected because there are kind of gaps in between her arm. So I'm going to add to selection and click on those two white areas. And you can also see that it didn't quite select these areas here that were kind of the shadows of the background when this picture was taken. So very much like we did with one of our previous lessons, I'm going to actually switch over to the lasso tool. And I'm going to make sure that I include these areas into the selection and just simply drawing them around. So I'll make sure I click on add to selection. And I'm going to go ahead and carefully draw around her shoe. And then when I come over here, it's real easy just to do a big old wide circle or gap to eliminate that little bit of gray shadow you see right there. All right, one more shadow to get rid of. And I think we are looking pretty good. If I was being real nitpicky, which I guess I go ahead and will be, if I did want to make sure I included that little bit of hair there, I'm just going to make sure that I um, click on remove from selection. You got to remember, we don't have the woman selected, we have the white background selected. So if there's something you want to get rid of, you're actually adding to the selection, like I just did with the shadows. But if I want to make sure that I include this little bit of hair here that I missed, I'm going to make sure I do remove from selection, and I'm still going to use the lasso select tool. And you can see that went ahead and fixed our selection, and we are looking pretty good. All right, now all I have to do is either hit the backspace key to delete this, or you can always go to edit and clear. Again, just a reminder, I don't have the woman selected here. I have the white background space selected. So I'm clearing and I'm deleting the background space. All right, you can see that did a pretty decent job of getting rid of the majority of the white background that we wanted to get rid of. I'm going to go ahead and select and deselect. But you can see there's still a little bit of a white haze, like a little bit of an edge around this woman. And actually, I will turn off the background just to kind of give you guys a better look at that. So there's this little bit of a white edge all the way around the outside of the image. Now, there's a couple things that we can do to try and help clean that up and get rid of it. Now, this image, this background, or I'm sorry, not the background, the image of the woman is still a selectable layer. And I can still select the area that has no pixels like I just did. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and get rid of some of that glow by reselecting the background and feathering a little bit of that space. Feathering basically means giving it a little bit of a softer edge whenever you make a selection. So using the wand select tool and making sure I'm in new selection mode, I'm just going to click anywhere here outside of the woman. And you can see it still does a pretty, actually a really great job of selecting all that area. Now, that really doesn't do anything for me. So what I want to do is adjust what's called the feather. Like I said earlier, it's kind of like this kind of blurriness of a selection. So if I deselect, adjust the feather this time, maybe roughly around 20. It all depends on your picture size. And I will select the background again, or the space outside of the woman, I should say. Notice how the selection line is a little closer in this time. Now, in this particular photo, I got to make sure I also include these two little gaps in between her arms and waist. And in case you missed that, I did go back to the add selection tool whenever I did that. And now if I hit clear or I hit the backspace key, with that feathered look, it eliminates some of that edge that I was trying to get rid of. It's not quite as prominent as it was before. Now, unfortunately, it still is there, but it definitely helped out significantly of trying to get rid of some of that white glow from our original background. So this is where we are going to, very much like we did in our last lesson, use the heal tool. And what I want to do is I want to eliminate some of that white glow on the outside of her. So I'm going to switch to infill, which allows me to kind of drag and draw. And I also want to make sure I'm using as small of a brush as possible. And even with this brush size, I want to make sure that I'm kind of working along the edge, not on the inside. So like this, not like this. So I'll start down here with her shoe. And again, I'm going to work around the edge with this brush. This is why the smaller brush size is ideal. And it smooths out that white glow that we were trying to eliminate. So I'm just going to go ahead and work my way around the image and get rid of that little bit of white background that didn't get selected from the background tool. And it's okay if it does get a little bit blurry because we're trying to go for a ghost effect here with this particular assignment. So if it is a little bit hazy or it isn't as detailed as we would usually want, that will be a-okay. Now for you guys, I know this is going to take some time because laptops might take a little more time processing these infill heel brush strokes. So just be patient as you work your way around the image and trying to get all parts of this little white haze eliminated. All right, one leg down, and then I got to make the rest of this a little softer using, again, our heel tool. And obviously, if you need to, you can go ahead and fast forward a little bit since this does or I should say, this is definitely the more time-consuming part of this assignment of making sure we get rid of that white edge glow, which is what I'll be looking for that you've done when grading this particular assignment. As usual, guys, though, you are welcome to use any photograph that you would like to for these particular assignment or for this particular assignment. But as I mentioned before, when choosing a person, make sure that they have a nice, clean, empty background, unless you really want to spend some time getting rid of everything else that you don't need for this assignment. I obviously have images provided in Google Classroom that you can use with people on nice blank backgrounds like this particular photograph. But if you do choose your own, just make sure that it's something that will make life a little bit easier when it comes to trying to eliminate that background and eliminate this kind of edge glow as we work our way around with this particular heel tool. And once again, it is okay that we are getting a little bit of a blur or soft edge along the outside of this particular person because we're trying to create a ghost effect. Like we're going to make it look as though she is a phantom or a ghost and is slightly transparent, which is actually going to be our next steps that we do now. All right. So we've got the woman, we've cleaned up the edges. We no longer have that white glow around the outside of her, which is what we're looking for. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the background back on. And I want to make sure what I'm going to do essentially is I'm going to merge these two images together as we learned in our last lesson where we're going to flatten the image. It basically means taking this layer and combining it into this image. But before I do that, I want to make sure that I am 100% satisfied with where I have her in the photograph. I want to consider the scale of her, how large she is. This obviously would not make very much sense because she looks a little too large. But if I do bring her down here to the bottom of the image, that is a little more realistic. Even though we're missing some of her feet, she does seem like she is closer to the camera. It's totally up to you where you want to place the person in your particular image. If I make her smaller, I definitely want to have her further back in this particular backyard lawn, but not too far because, again, she would look way too large if she was up here. but I'm going to make sure that she's a little bit on the larger side. And I'm going to have her look as though she's a little closer to the camera, even if we do miss a little bit of her feet right there. I think that looks fairly realistic when it comes to her size, scale, and where I am placing her in the photograph. All right, now that I'm satisfied with where she is, I'm going to go ahead and merge my layers. Now, you will not be able to go back and undo this unless you are able to go back through the history tab, which all of you guys already know about. But when I merge, there's nothing else I can do to move or arrange her around this image unless I go back through my history. But I'm satisfied with where she is. She looks fairly realistic when it comes to the placement of where she is in the grass. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to flatten the image. And now my original kind of backyard photograph and the picture of the woman is now combined into one layer. All right, now it is time for our final steps. And I totally forgot one. I want to make sure that she looks somewhat transparent. So, as I was just saying, I'm actually going to go back to my history. I apologize, guys. Hopefully, that isn't too difficult for you guys to go back to your history. Before I flatten the image, I totally forgot that I need to make her look somewhat transparent because we're going for a ghost effect. Like she looks as though she is somewhat transparent. So, before I flatten the image, I want to make sure that I adjust the transparency of her particular layer. So again, clicking on the three dots opens up your layer settings, and I'm going to just adjust the transparency a little bit. Essentially, I want some of the background of this image showing through her body. And as you can see, I am getting that effect with the fence and the trees and the leaves all showing through her body. And again, the transparency is what we want. I found that roughly somewhere around 70 is ideal for this particular type of image. Now, I am going to go ahead and flatten the image. And now we have a combined photograph. So again, I apologize. I forgot to do that step. But again, as you guys already know, you can go back in your history and undo that. So again, before you merge the layers, just make sure that you have a little bit of transparency applied to the person's layer before you flatten the image. All right. Now, our final and last step to kind of make this look a little spookier, make make it look a little more vintage, is that we want to go ahead and apply a final filter. So we're going to go to filter up here at the top, and we're going to use the effects library. These are very similar to kind of like Instagram like filters, where you can apply a sepia, a colored effect, black and white. There's lots and lots of options in here, but we're going to go look for one in particular to make this kind of look a little old timey and look a little more vintage. So we're going to click on Effect Library, and we're going to go right here to where it says Too Old. There's lots of different options that you guys have when it comes to effects and filters, but we're going to try and look for these black and white or old timey photos when it comes to Too Old in the effects library. And there's lots of different options here. And again, we're trying to make this look a little vintage. And I personally prefer the SAMPI, SAMPI filter, but you're welcome to try any of these other ones. And I will totally be okay if you want to mix it up. The reason why I like this one is because it gives a little bit of that browned sepia effect, and also desaturates the image of eliminating the color. Something like here with Vinny, it still does allow a little bit of color, but you are welcome to choose any of these. And then you can also adjust how intense that particular filter is. So you can see it's allowing some color in. I particularly like it at 100% because it desaturates, eliminates all of the color out of the image, and still gives us that nice ghosty, old-time vintage effect. I'll hit apply, and that is it. So we have created an image of a person that looks a little transparent, looks a little ghosty, a little spooky, but also creating this nice kind of old-time vintage effect in the entire image. Hopefully, all of this makes sense, guys. And please let me know, as always, during class time if you need any help.